The Louisiana sun hung heavy over the intersection of Main and Oak, its humid weight pressing down on Ana Lopez, a 12-year-old girl clutching a poster board scrawled with the defiant words, "Jesus was crazy," in thick red marker. Her dark eyes blazed with a mix of anger and hurt. Her small frame, rigid with determination, as she stood on the bustling street corner where cars honked and pedestrians wove through the afternoon chaos. Just a few hours earlier, Anna had stormed out of St. Michael's Catholic school. Her heart, a raw wound torn open by a religion class that felt like a personal betrayal. Sister Teresa, her teacher, had been waxing poetic about Jesus, perfect, sinless, the ultimate model for human behavior. And the words grated against Anna's pain like sandpaper on an open cut. "If Jesus is so perfect," she'd shouted, her voice cracking in the silent classroom, "then why didn't he stop my dad from leaving us?" The room froze 24 pairs of eyes, turning to the girl whose father had walked out 6 months ago, leaving behind a stack of unpaid bills, a heartbroken mother, and a daughter who now blamed God for staying silent. Sister Teresa, with her soft gray eyes and practiced calm, tried to soothe Anna with gentle words about God's mysterious plan, about how everything happens for a reason, but Anna was far beyond the reach of platitudes. Her chest heaved with fury as she grabbed her backpack, snatched a poster board from the art supply closet, and bolted out of the school, her sneakers pounding the pavement as her mind churned with a plan that felt like righteous vengeance. If Jesus was supposed to be this all-loving, all-powerful savior, why did good people like her mom suffer, while the ones who caused the pain, like her dad, got to walk away without a scratch? The poster board became her weapon, her declaration of war against a God who had failed her when she needed him most. With a fat red marker she'd swiped from her mother's purse, Anna poured her anger onto the board, each letter a stab at the faith she'd once held. The intersection of Main and Oak, with its endless stream of cars and foot traffic, seemed like the perfect stage for her rebellion, a place where hundreds of eyes would see her challenge, where her voice, though small, could demand answers. She planted herself on the corner, her sign held high, her glare daring anyone to meet her eyes. Most pedestrians averted their gaze, their steps quickening as they passed the angry girl with the provocative sign, but a few slowed to snap pictures with their phones, their curiosity feeding Anna's resolve. She'd been standing there for nearly 2 hours, her arms aching under the weight of the poster board, her throat dry from the humid air, but her anger burned brighter than ever until a modest sedan with Louisiana plates rolled up to the red light, and the driver did something that threw her completely off balance. Unlike the countless others who glanced at her sign and sped off, distracted by their phones or their schedules, this man fixed his gaze on her message with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not anger, not shock, but something softer like recognition or understanding. When the light turned green, he didn't drive away. Instead, he eased his car to the curb, cut the engine, and stepped out, his movements deliberate but unhurried. Anna's pulse quickened as she watched this stranger approach her grip, tightening on the sign as she braced for confrontation. But there was something about his calm demeanor, the way his hands stayed visible and non-threatening, that kept her feet rooted to the cracked sidewalk. "That's a bold statement you've got there," the man said, his voice carrying the warm, unmistakable drawl of Louisiana, steady and inviting. "I'm John, and I've spent a fair bit of time thinking about Jesus myself." Anna jutted her chin out, her defenses up, expecting the kind of lecture she'd heard too many times from teachers and priests about respect and blasphemy. "You some kind of preacher or something." She shot back, her tone sharp with the practiced hostility of someone who'd been let down one too many times. The man smiled, and it was genuine, the kind that reached his eyes and made Anna's walls waver just for a moment. "Nope, I'm a senator," he replied, leaning casually against a nearby light pole, his posture relaxed, like they were old friends catching up. "I serve the folks of Louisiana, and that means listening to people, especially when they've got something important to say." Anna's eyes narrowed. She'd heard of Senator John Kennedy. Most people in Louisiana had. His straightforward talk, his knack for cutting through nonsense, and his reputation for caring about the everyday struggles of his constituents were hard to miss. "So you're like important?" she asked, a flicker of curiosity breaking through her anger, though she tried to keep her tough facade intact. John chuckled, glancing at his unflashy sedan and the simple jacket slung over his arm. "Important's a stretch, but some folks know who I am," he said with a humility that felt real. "What I want to know is what's got you out here with that sign?" "That's a message that demands a story." His question caught her off guard, not because it was pushy, but because it wasn't. There was no judgment in his tone, just a quiet curiosity, like he genuinely wanted to understand her. Anna's fingers tightened around the edges of the poster board, her mind racing through the months of pain that had led her to this corner, the nights she'd lain awake hearing her mom's muffled sobs through the thin walls of their apartment, the unanswered prayers she'd whispered into the dark, begging God to bring her dad back. For the first time, someone was asking her to explain without assuming they already knew the answers, and it threw her carefully built armor into disarray. "It's because Jesus is supposed to be this big deal," she said finally, her voice quieter now, though still edged with defiance. "Everyone says he's so perfect, so powerful, but he didn't do anything when my dad left us. If he's really all that, why let stuff like that happen?" John nodded slowly, his face softening with empathy that didn't feel forced. "That's a real question, Anna," he said, and the sound of her name startled her. She hadn't told him, and for a split second she felt a jolt of unease. "How'd you know my name?" she demanded, lowering the sign slightly, her eyes narrowing again. John pointed to the embroidered St. Michael's logo on her uniform polo, and the small name tag still clipped to her backpack from a recent field trip. "Your school, and that tag there," he explained, his smile gentle but not patronizing. "Plus, you've got the look of someone wrestling with some heavy stuff." His observation hit closer than she wanted to admit, and Anna felt her defenses wobble again. "So what if I am?" she challenged, though the venom in her voice was starting to fade. "Nothing wrong with that," John replied, his tone as steady as ever. "Asking big questions like that. It shows you're thinking hard, taking it seriously. In my book, that's a good thing." This wasn't the response Anna had braced for. She'd expected a sermon, a scolding, or at least some kind of argument from a man like him, someone whose public life was built on clear convictions and sharp insight. Instead, here was Senator John Kennedy, known for his wit and his heart for Louisiana's people, standing on a noisy street corner, giving her space to be angry without shutting her down. It was disarming, and for the first time that day, Anna felt a tiny crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. "But you think I'm wrong about Jesus, don't you?" she pressed, studying his face for the judgment she was sure would come. John tilted his head, eyeing the cars streaming by as if choosing his words with the same care he used in the halls of the Capitol. "Well, I'm curious first," he said, turning back to her. "What makes you say he's crazy?" "What's your case?" Anna blinked, caught off balance again. No one had asked her to back up her anger with reasoning before they'd just told her she was wrong. Well, she started scrambling to gather her thoughts. He said he was God, right? And he talked to people who weren't there, and he let himself get killed when he could have stopped it. That sounds pretty crazy to me. Her words came out with the confidence of a science class debate, but underneath, she felt a flicker of doubt, wondering how he'd counter. John nodded, his expression thoughtful, like he was genuinely weighing her points. "Those are strong arguments," he said, surprising her again. "By most folks' standards, that'd raise some eyebrows for sure." He paused, his eyes meeting hers with a sincerity that made her feel seen, not judged. "But here's what's been nagging at me about that idea. I've spent some time digging into Jesus' story, his words, his actions, and there's something about it that doesn't quite fit the crazy label." Anna's brow furrowed, her curiosity now battling her anger for control. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice softer, almost against her will. John gestured toward a nearby bus stop bench, inviting her to sit with a nod. After a moment's hesitation, she followed, perching on the edge, still clutching her sign like a shield. "Think about it," he said, settling in beside her, his tone conversational, not preachy. "Folks who are truly out of their minds, their thoughts don't hold together right. They're all over the place, can't keep a straight line. But Jesus, his teachings connect like pieces of a puzzle. He built real relationships, had folks who stuck by him even when it was hard. Even his enemies admitted he was sharp." Anna frowned, thinking of a cousin who struggled with mental health, whose words often tumbled out in a jumble. She hadn't expected John to take her seriously, let alone engage like this. "But what about all the miracle stuff?" she countered, her voice gaining strength. "Walking on water, raising dead people, that's not normal." John grinned, a spark of amusement in his eyes, like he enjoyed the challenge. "You're right, that's not everyday stuff," he said. "I used to think those stories were just that, stories, maybe metaphors or exaggerations. But the more you dig, the more you